So we have our Sangha and then also some international friends from abroad. So thank you so much for taking the time to. We're in the middle of doing a 1 month fairly intensive. Every morning we do the Generosity Sadhana by Tangtong Gyalpo. And then we do the Bodhicharyavatara, the reading of the Bodhicharyavatara every day as well, as recommended by Tukurumse. So thank you so much for sparing your time. It's a really great pleasure to see you and have you with us.
I would first like to start by greeting all of you who have been doing this intensive retreat. This is something so precious for us who have heard the Buddha's name and who know of the Buddha's biography. He showed us an example of how to follow his example. It is something so precious to us that the Buddha, in spite of being a prince, and not only a prince, but a responsible prince, a prince, son, as we say these days, husband, father. And not only that, after visiting his country and city, became the epitome of what a ruler should be, wanting to lead his the subjects. And although many of us might think that he left his family, child behind, I don't think that that is quite how I would frame it. I think when he left his palace, when he wanted to leave his palace, his father, he wanted the permission of his father to leave. And then when his father didn't consent to him leaving right away, I think one of the major arguments in my mind was that in order to be a responsible ruler, not somebody who just wants to hold on to his role as a prince, as a king, but somebody who really wanted to serve his subjects. When his father did not have any suggestions as to how to stop the suffering of his subjects, the suffering, as you know, he saw old people, sick people, poor people, dying people. And I think in all his education, there wasn't something that dealt with that. So he wanted to go and search for a solution of, for those ailments of his subjects. And I think to that, his father did not have any answer. So Prince Siddhartha left his palace, not because he wanted to be a recluse and not want a responsibility. It was in order to take full responsibility, not just for his subjects, not just for his family, but for every sentient being, everyone. That is why he left. And as you all know, it is he practiced intensely for 6 years. So even for us, even if we can spare 6 minutes, 6 seconds, it is something so great where we can have some genuine introspection, where we can contemplate, study, hear the Buddha's teachings. So I would like to first congratulate you for setting aside 1 month where you are doing this intensive practice. This is really how we can follow the Buddha's example. And of course, everything depends on causes and conditions, and so does our own practice. For our mind to be able to practice, the conditions are so influent on our mind. They have such strong influence on our mind. So for that, whether it is setting some time apart or even being in an environment that is conducive to practicing, it's something so helpful, so precious. This session, I think, was labeled mainly mind training, isn't it?
Yes, Rinpoche.
Yes. So mind training is something, it's a very, very, how can we say, vast subject. In fact, there is actually nothing in the teachings of the Buddha that doesn't fall under the heading of mind training. In fact, I think from the very outset, even just hearing about the Buddha, the word Buddha, from that moment on, I think it can be understood or utilized as mind training. In terms of mind training, I suppose we have to understand what training means. I suppose training is usually something that we consider something that is helpful, something that is good, something that is wholesome, because nobody would ever think, I'm going to train and get myself more stupid, more deluded, more crazy, and more pained. It means, it has to have some meaning of something that makes us more sane, more healthy, more wholesome. What do we want? What do we hope for with anything that we're trying to do? In fact, for us ordinary people, absolutely everything we do, hopefully it is something that makes our life better, more sane, less crazy, less stupid. Hopefully that is what it is. And so when we are thinking of mind training, it is helpful to think, what does training mean to me? what are the criteria of training? In general, mind training also suggests that we have to have a basic level of intelligence. It has something to do with some kind of sanity of our mind, some kind of intelligence of our mind. So when there's some basic intelligence, then it's trainable. You know, even as human beings, even our pets are trainable. Like your dogs, your cats, because they have some level of intelligence, then they're trainable. I don't know if it is still happening now, but some people had pebbles as pets, stones as pets. I don't know if they're trainable, whether those pieces of stones do something that their owners or whatever they are, whether that's trainable or not. Other than that, I think most pets are trainable. So when we're talking about mind training, it's also, you know, referring to some level of intelligence. Now, in terms of what we call lo or lotre, like intelligence, then for most of us sentient beings, we have enough intelligence to avoid pain and want freedom from pain. Eventually, developing on that, our human beings have worked on it, developed it further, and now, you know, we have even the ability to go to the moon and bring things from the moon. That's how our human intelligence have evolved, have been developed. We have developed the ability to predict weather patterns, to predict earthquakes, all natural calamities, and also unnatural human trends. We have developed that based on our usage of this intelligence. More than 2,600 years ago, when the Buddha taught, human beings at that time were also very, very intelligent. Many philosophies, systems were available. Human intelligence was also very developed at that time. And to relate to that, to cater to that, and then to uplift that intelligence, then the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths. For example, even at that time, when the Buddha taught the truth of suffering, when he said there is suffering, in general, I think those people who understood what the Buddha said, when he said that, I don't think anybody was shocked and surprised that there was suffering in general. But that wasn't what the Buddha was referring to. That was common knowledge that there is suffering. And then what is not common to everyone, but at that time too, what was common to people who had studied, trained, developed a further understanding when studying our human experience, was that there's also, for example, suffering of change. That wasn't specifically limited to the Buddhist teachings. Even at that time, there were many people who had become renunciates, who had become hermits, because they understood suffering of change. So there you can see how the intelligence, the training developed the quality of the training of the mind from only knowing suffering upon suffering to suffering of change, and then specifically suffering of compounded nature. In that was specifically what the Buddha was teaching. He lifted the knowledge, the wisdom, the understanding from common to a little bit less common to a specifically Buddhist idea of what suffering is, in that as long as we have this aggregate of body, feeling, etc., it's suffering. So when we can study and learn in this way and understand this, that is the basis of mind training. There is an actual training that's happening in terms of understanding the more subtler and subtler teachings. And then based on that kind of truth of suffering, then the Buddha's teachings on what the cause of suffering also lifts, or can we say uplifts, our level of understanding, and therefore the level of the quality of intelligence or quality of investigating and quality of knowing is uplifted. And then based on that, we can also deduce the understanding of what the cessation of suffering would mean, what we think is the cessation of suffering, and what it is based on the understanding of truth of suffering and truth of cause of suffering. Then we have a different understanding of truth of cessation, and through that we can fully appreciate what the truth of the path is. So it is in that way that we are actually doing mind training from the moment we hear about the teachings of the Buddha. And slowly with that, our way we look at our world, our perspective, our how we relate to our sensations, feelings, completely gets an overhaul. So that's really the idea, the beginning of the idea of mind training. Mind training is done through studying and then familiarizing oneself with that study through contemplating it until that contemplation is something that we can actually get accustomed to. So basically, studying, contemplating, and meditating, that is what mind training requires. So when we are studying, reading, we should really consider this mind training. We should consider this something really precious. We should consider this something quite exciting. I suppose, the past lives of the Buddha as a bodhisattva, being so excited, hearing that there is 4-line teaching of the Buddha available and that someone knows them. And regardless of how eccentric, strange, crazy their demands might be, they're being so excited to hear those four-line teachings of the Buddha, where even if they are asked to give up all their belongings, give up themselves, they're ready to hear those things. This actually is some encouragement to us to actually feel excited to study, to the point that when we have, for example, the books like the Bodhisattva, just having it should give us some kind of joy or excitement that makes us, makes our heart beat. That kind of enthusiasm is really, really precious to have. And as you were saying, that you are reading this every day, that is so precious. I would like to ask you to become so excited that you cannot contain your joy that you're going to read that. Not only read it, but you can't wait to hear them, understand them, and enjoy the understanding of the way of the Bodhisattva, like the preciousness, the qualities, the benefit of the bodhicitta, and then the beautiful descriptions of generosity, discipline, patience, etc. So even that excitement that you have, or you can have right now as you're hearing it, I hope some of you have the excitement, to feel the excitement of reading it again. That already is mind training. It is important for us to understand that mind training isn't just limited to just a few texts, few poems, few verses. In fact, the entire teaching of the Buddha is something that can be used as a way of training our mind. One could say that from the moment the Buddha appeared on this earth, the possibility of training the mind according to the Buddha's teachings started. From the moment we think of the Buddha, think of the Bodhisattvas, there's already mind training. Just like when we say school, studying, universities, even, for example, the bricks of that university are part of where that learning can happen. Even the air conditioning, even the lights, every tools in that place is something that sustains our education, training. Likewise, from the Buddhist point of view, everything to do with the Buddha, his teachings, his awakening, are all support of our mind training. So it is important to know, feel that we have so much conditions and causes for mind training available in this world, in our life. From the Buddhist point of view, when the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, he taught that, first of all, it's something that it is that is easy for us all to relate to, because it is basically very sound reasoning. When the Buddha said there is suffering, there is cause of suffering, and as there is cause of suffering, then removing that cause of suffering, if that is possible, then there is cessation of suffering possible. So that is something that all of our ordinary mind can relate to. It is a reasoning that we all consider to be reasonable, intelligent, intelligible. And then, of course, through the Buddha's own wisdom, and then he helps us to uplift ourselves from that ordinary understanding of suffering and cause of suffering to something that takes us beyond that. So that is how the different kinds of mind trainings are to be understood within the Buddhist path, whether it is from a very, very general point of view, or whether it is from the Shravakayana point of view, whether it is from the the Mahayana point of view, Vajrayana point of view, then the understanding of the Four Noble Truths becomes more and more precise, more and more subtle. But the whole thing is about lifting our mind from ignorance and bringing it to awakening. This framework, when we notice truth of suffering, and then when we notice what feeds that truth of suffering, how we actually feed that truth of suffering ourselves, when we notice that, slowly, when our intelligence is awake enough to detect cause of suffering happening, and then if that can connect with our wish to not suffer, when they can connect with each other, and a reaction happens between our wish to not suffer and our ability to see the cause of suffering happening. If that happens long enough, and if our wish to suffer, not suffer, is sustained enough, then a reaction will happen. That reaction, hopefully, will be that we don't want to continue suffering. And we will change how we relate to that cause of suffering. And if we are fortunate enough to not want it, and to make that not wanting that become reality, then we have the beginning of mind training, renunciation. We will genuinely want to renounce cause of suffering. Now, this might happen, and I'm sure it happens to many of us, but unfortunately, it is not sustained. It doesn't last long. And our usual habit of cocooning ourselves and our usual entitlement of being Princess P takes over. And our main practice of mind training is the to and fro between those two, so that we actually want to feel an intense renunciation or disgust of our entitlement and our Princess P. Until that happens, mind training is going to be, what is it called? 1 step forward, 10 steps backwards, half a step forward, 100 steps backwards. That's what we all are. That is the reality of a person like me who's trying to do mind training. And these are things like when we notice our perspective on our life's experiences, when we are disappointed by the fact that impermanent things are impermanent, when we would love certain impermanent things to be permanent, and certain things to be pleasant. You know, for example, like the characteristic, the definition of truth of suffering is meant to be, it is suffering, understanding the three ways of understanding suffering, but we don't see it as suffering. And things are not permanent, but we act and relate to them as if they were permanent. Even in our conscious mind, even though we won't say things are permanent, but somewhere deep down, our reference, our experience of it points to some kind of, can we say, virus in our computer, in our brain, in our mind, that things are permanent. Or instead of seeing things according to the four seals, we see them as opposite. That is actually cause of suffering. So we need to develop a certain understanding, certain wish to remove that kind of glitch in our intelligence. That is really what we call renunciation. And we need to get used to that, because at this moment, the whole view, our whole view of our life, of this world, is based on the lack of understanding, lack of knowing that everything is compounded, and the complete lack of knowing that things are impermanent, that things are suffering, that things do not have a solid, true existence. These are all really what mind training is supposed to be based on. It is based on these basics that we need to build all the next layers of mind training. That basically all compounded things are impermanent. They come from causes and conditions, not made by just one person. You know, somebody might annoy us, and we will think that that person is the maker of all my discomfort. But actually, if we look further, everything is based on a very, very complex causes and conditions. And that's why I am suffering something or experiencing something. It's not made up just by one thing. So these are all informations that has to be uploaded to our mind, and they need to be updated again and again. Every time we go from, for example, the general Shravakayana teachings to the Mahayana teachings to the Vajrayana teachings, this upgrade is happening. But each of these upgrades are based on the initial programs, initial intelligence. I'm sure you have all heard all the different mind training teachings, like the 7-point mind training, the 37 practices, the 8 verses, wheel of weapons, etc. There's so many of them that have been put together by the teachers of our lineage and our teachers, so that we can practice easily. They are really like toolboxes that have been prepared by people who are adepts, who are specialists in using these tools. The initial tool chest is the Buddha who taught these. And then each of us have our own tools that is necessary to us based on our own leanings, our own connections with these teachers. For example, the 8 verses, the 37 practices are really like these pocket knives. What is it called? Like the Swiss knife that people have. There's, some Swiss knives have just 4, some have just 1 knife, some have 4, some have 10, some have 34. So for example, like the 37 practices is really like one of these, what is it called? Adventurous knives that has absolutely everything in it. I'm sure, even if it has only 37 things in it, the applications are countless. So it is so great for us that we have been exposed to these different instructions. None of these instructions are redundant. None of these instructions are too much or too little. Each of them have so many different methods, so many pith instructions for us. Instead of having to lug around with us every tool in the world, these teachers have made it so that it's so easily applicable for us. And for example, the way of the Bodhisattva, again, is a complete tool chest to itself, from which most of our mind training practices is being extracted from. So I'm so happy that you have the time, and not only the time, but you have the merit to practice this. Even if you don't have the merit to practice this all the time, I'm so happy that you have the fortune to possess this book, and not only that, to read it every day. So I would like to say congratulations for having such a tool chest. And just to let you know, for example, in general with the Four Noble Truths, first we notice through our studying and contemplating and meditating, we notice the ability, the possibility of becoming free from the cycle of existence, which is basically the chain reaction between the truth of suffering and truth of cause of suffering. When we can cut that, then it is possible to become free from the cycle of existence, especially when we can develop a renunciation to this grasping to a truly independent, singular, permanent self. And then later on, as we are on the Bodhisattvayana path, then we not only have a renunciation to that, but also we have renunciation to the lack of empathy for the sake of all sentient beings, where one is not only wanting to be free oneself, but one wants to be free from the wish to be free on our own, but want every single sentient being to becoming free. That is how the renunciation or the mind training gets upgraded to the Bodhisattvayana path. And then eventually, if some of you are Vajrayana practitioners, then one can upgrade that to pure perception. Throughout the whole path, there is mind training happening. But for all of that, the basic thing that we have to remember is the framework of the Four Noble Truths, where we understand that this whole experience of ours in this world is based on truth of suffering, knowing what truth of suffering is. That has to become the atmosphere of our practice, knowing that wherever it is in this cycle of existence, as long as we are caught in this delusion where we don't see truth of suffering properly, then everything that we do is not going to take us out of it. So basically, remembering that there is suffering everywhere. As long as there is a sentient being whose mind is not free from cause of suffering, there is suffering. And we need to develop that wish to be free from that. Basically, all our practice should be based on the intelligence to have the ability to see what we need to be free from. It's not so much suffering in the usual sense, but basically knowing we need the ability to know where there is distortion, where there is mistaken perception. That intelligence should be the atmosphere of our mind, should be the basis of our survival instinct. Our survival instinct isn't going to be based on self-centeredness, but based on knowing, based on wisdom, based on fearlessness. That should be the basis of our mind training. I want to say thank you to all of you for listening, and mainly thank you to all of you for practicing in this these days. Everything is so volatile. Everyone is so busy. I'm sure none of us are as busy as Prince Siddhartha used to be, being a prince, having to look after or be part of a kingdom. If he was not busy enough to become enlightened, then we're really not busy enough to not get, to not train our mind. But somehow, I think all of us are convinced that we are much more busy and much more in demand than Prince Siddhartha. And at least at this moment, you have had the time to spend, is it a month together doing this practice? I would really like to say thank you for doing that and congratulate you for doing this. And I also heard that my friends, those of you who are in Korea, are going to move to a new location on, is it 6th of July? I want to really congratulate you for making that happen. That is something so good, even though the best location you have already moved to, that is to train your mind and put your mind in a place of training your mind. But as I said in the beginning, environment is very, very important for us. Even though we're not supposed to be so affected by environment, sitting in a, what can we say, uninspiring place is going to be very difficult to train our mind. So if the outer surrounding is something from which we will not be kicked out next month, next week, etc., etc., it is so good. So first of all, I would like to congratulate you for making this place available for you to practice. So I'm sure many of you are involved in making this happen, but I'm sure also 용수스님 is mostly responsible for doing this. So 용수스님 and all your friends, I would like to say congratulations for finding this place where all of you can gather around. So Dashidilik. And thank you.
Okay. So the first question is enlightenment, is it something that happens at once in a moment, or is it something that happens, is something that you accumulate over time?
Do you remember waking up in the morning? Ideally, we would like to be awake.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about this sleep, for us, we're not able to remove the sleep completely, so they keep coming back. But the process of it happens for some quickly, some slowly, depending on the sleep quality, the depth of the sleep. I think it depends on the quality of the sleep. Imagine you have a glue that is very, very sticky. How do you remove the glue? If the product that we use to remove the glue works slowly, depending on how the viscosity of the glue, then it might remove something quickly or slowly. It really depends on the quality of the obscuration. In terms of our experience of it, that's what I mean. I'm not saying the enlightenment itself, but how we perceive it, it must have something to do with that. I don't know.
Okay, next question.
Yes.
Okay, can you recommend some, I think you already did, but can you recommend some Lojong books, like to start?
Yes,
to begin with?
the four, what is it called? The 8 verses.
Okay.
7-point mind training.
Okay.
And 37 practices.
Okay.
There's so many mind training texts available. But the way of the Bodhisattva is really something so profound, beautiful. And I think it is also the inspiration of many, many mind training books.
Okay, so the next question. How can I make my renunciation stable?
Have you ever made a house of cards?
What is that? Let me say.
They put cards together to make it into a...
Yeah.
With cards, with playing cards.
Okay, so...
if you have done it, you know how to do that requires a lot of balancing and a lot of training, a lot of repetition, so that it can actually stay. Well, I think making renunciation stable requires that developing that kind of training, that kind of commitment. I think it's actually much simpler. How can you get a stable income? I think if you want a stable income, if you go to your employees, whenever you want, once in a blue moon, your income might not become very stable.
So this person says, when we practice, if you were just to say, please don't forget this one thing, just don't forget this one thing, what would that one thing be?
Well, all compounded things are impermanent. And then if you want extra one, then the next one, which is all emotions are suffering. And if you remember that, then the next one, and then the next one.
Okay.
And then basically every single sentient being is in the same boat that I'm in. Okay?
Okay. This person asked the same question.
Okay.
So he asked, what is the most important thing to remember as a lay practitioner?
Yes. Well, as a lay practitioner, truth of suffering, whether we're a lay practitioner or not, it's the same. Cause of suffering is still cause of suffering. I think remembering these two are really, really most important for us because it keeps us sane. It helps us have a sane relation with our life, with reality. And the most important thing is to feel empowered by that knowledge. The knowledge of knowing truth of suffering, knowing what is cause of suffering. If you can feel empowered by it and empowered enough to do something about it, then that's all you need. If you apply that truth of the path, then even if you don't want suffering to stop, unfortunately or fortunately, it will stop. So it's so helpful to feel how empowering the truth of the path is. The Buddha's teachings is so empowering for us. And the teachings that the Buddha has given is so empowering, beautiful, because it is so rigorous. At the same time, it is so freeing. The truth of the path is uncompromising because the law of cause and effect, law of physics, law of cause and effect in general is uncompromising.
These people, they're same question, similar. They're asking for the
Okay.
they're asking for the one thing.
Okay. All right.
She says in the Lojong Teaching,
yes.
is there something that we have to remind ourselves every day?
Yes.
For our practice, what should we remind ourselves every day? There's one thing. Mm-hmm. Everyone's looking for that one thing.
Okay. All right. What do I want? Basically, we are training our mind. Keep remembering, why do we want to train our mind? And then compare why we think we want to train our mind, and then apply to that why the Buddha's teachings, how and why it suggests we train our mind. The short summary of the Buddha's teaching where it says, engage in virtuous actions, don't engage in negative actions. Train your mind. This is what the Buddha taught, meaning this is what the awakened one taught. That is the real, I think, essence of what we need to remember, training the mind so that it can avoid non-virtuous actions and increase virtuous actions. Okay.
All right, Rinpoche. So
All right.
we'll say goodbye to you first, and then we'll
Yes.
do the dedication.
Okay.
Or
Sure.
okay,
Yes.
okay. So
Goodbye.
thank you,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much, Rinpoche. Please be
Thank you very
healthy,
much.
and
Thank
thank you so
you.
much for your time. Okay.
Thank you.